Okay, now that the shutter's open, the next thing we need to do is get the computer started up for operation. It's conveniently hidden behind this closet door. Okay, the power switch for the computer is down here in the center front portion of it. We press that once, everything should light up. The monitor, if the light doesn't come on for the monitor, the on switch is there at the bottom of the monitor. It'll go through a few gyrations. Yes, we're still running Windows XP. Now it's important during this boot up and login process that if it asks you for any updates to click no. The computer has been configured specifically for operation with the telescope, and sometimes the updates can change settings that might otherwise adversely affect your evening of enjoyable viewing. Okay, once it finally comes up to the Windows login screen, click on Keyholder. No password is required. And now's the point where if it comes up to ask for any updates, please click no. Now we're ready to get the telescope prepped for operation. First thing we have to do is we have to take the dew light or dew zapper off the base, click it off. This is left on during a non-use operation of the telescope to prevent any kind of a dew collection or accumulation on the mirror. I usually just hang it over here on the little bar next to the power panel. After this, we have to take the water coverings off of here. Unfortunately, the dome does leak. We get snow, rain, all sorts of precipitation in here. So it's key, it's important that the electronics on the base of the telescope be covered and kept safe from the elements. In order to take the tarp off, there's a carabiner clip on both sides that go through the eyelets on the tarp. So just go ahead and unclip one of them, leave the other one hanging on here. Okay, the other one has magically already been disconnected. So we pull the tarp off, and I do a halfway neat job of folding it just so it'll store away easily for the rest of the evening. Okay, once I've folded it up, I come around to the base of the telescope, and there's a nice little nook here where I can just stash the tarp. And just for educational purposes, if you want to know why this is so important, if you look down here at the base of the telescope, the drive motor, control electronics, optical encoders, or that's better. We've got all these electronics down here which are not waterproof. So it's a key that the tarp is placed properly to keep any moisture from any rain getting in and raining down into the electronics. Okay, the next step, we have the remote control hand controller, which is kept safe by this expensive plastic trash bag. And the controller is in this protective metal box, and it's got a heavy duty cable. Okay, once I've taken the plastic bag covering off the hand controller, the power switch to the telescope itself is this regular light type switch. If we flip that over, the light will come on indicating there is power to the telescope. Now the telescope still needs to have the dew cover removed, and the dew and dust cover removed from the top of the telescope. So we'll have to move the telescope. Now on the hand controller itself, there's a bunch of buttons here, but it's important to start out to move quickly. The slew button will have a light on it. Press the slew button, it toggles on and off, but if it's on, the telescope moves at the fastest speed. The arrows, you can think of as north, south, east, west. I just think of it as up and down for right now, so we want to move the telescope down to get to the cover. So if I press the down button, now you want to get it down as close as possible to where you can reach the dew cover or the dust cover. However, you need to watch where the telescope's coming because it will crash into the fork mount if you're not careful. Typically what I do is I move it at high speed until I'm pretty close to the fork. Then I'll stop and I'll show you how to change the speed so I can move more slowly. Okay, now I want to move the telescope a little more slowly. So what I do is I press the slew button again. Now it switches over to what's called tracking speeds. There's 4 lights here. You can only see 3, but if I hold the view velocity, I use the up and down arrows. You can see the lights change. So when there's only one LED on, it's the slowest. That's very slow. And if I move it all the way up again by pressing the up button, it moves to the fastest. but all of these speeds are significantly slower than the slew rate. So I've got it at the fastest tracking speed, but that's still pretty slow. So if I press the down button again and keep an eye on the base of the telescope, okay, that's got it pretty close to where I should be able to reach everything. Now, typically when I put the hand controller down, it's safer just to lay it flat down on the box. It'll stay there safely, none of the buttons will get pressed. At this point, once the telescope's lowered in position before you can use it, you need to take the dust cap off the end of it. There's two clips, one on each side. So you loosen the clip, and then you'll have to pop this clip out from the holder. Please notice that the focuser label goes on the side with the focuser. So once we take that off, grab it by the two handles, pull it off, and then this goes into the utility closet for storage for the evening. Now while we've got it down low like here, this is the 3-inch focusing mechanism, a very nice dual speed focuser where you have a fast speed out here and a slow speed on the inside. I believe this is a 10-to-1 reducer. We have an 80mm spotter scope here. So we've got a pretty nice setup. Most of this stuff is new and it's very nice equipment. Okay, now that the dust cover is off, we're going to remove the cover from the eyepiece holder. You loosen the 3 outer screws that are kind of in a triangle, equilateral triangle shape. Take this out, and for just right now I'm going to put it on the hand controller. It's always recommended you start with a low power eyepiece, which will give you a wide field of view and pretty good eye relief, which means you don't have to put your eye right on the lens to see anything. So if we take this out, go ahead and fit it in till it seats. And tighten the 3 screws. It's important that they be snug, but you don't have to crank them down to the point where you're going to either damage the eyepiece or strip the threads. With 3 screws, it's a very secure position. It'll be held in there securely. Now we're ready to get the telescope set up for alignment process. Once again, take the hand controller, make sure the slew light is on by pressing this bottom middle button. Press the up button to move the telescope back up or towards the north. We don't have to be precise at this point because we have some computer operations to do next. However, we'll get it roughly pointed at zenith. And if you're ambidextrous, you can actually move the telescope in both axes at once. Okay, that's pretty close. Now we've got the telescope in this position. I want to point out a couple of other things, or 3 things actually. First of all, Gary C. Ruisinger is the person that designed this telescope. He's actually worked for the post office and he spent many, many months putting this telescope together. So the telescope is named after him. It's a 29.5 inch or almost 30 inch telescope. Gathers about 11,500 times as much light as the naked eye by itself. So it's a pretty cool instrument. This is what's called the centering box. What that's going to do, or the leveling box. Later on, the next step, we'll use that to indicate when the telescope is precisely pointed straight up. We also have a tail rad over here, which I'm not going to go into great operation detail right now. But one thing I do want to point out is there's a switch here that will adjust the brightness of the tail rad. However, these are specially modified tail rads. They have a battery saver option. If you see this little red button here, in order to power the tail rad, you press the button once. It will power the tail rad for about 2 minutes and then it will shut off. The reason we do that is because oftentimes we've come out here only to find the tail rad's been left on since the last week or 2 ago when it was used and the batteries are dead.